Hello, everybody in Government Secrets Land. My name is Graham Elwood at an undisclosed location, drinking a delicious vegan smoothie. Vegan protein powder, unsweetened organic almond milk, an organic mixed berry collection. I can't disclose all of the berries because it was very cryptic on the cover of the frozen berry package. And a scoop of unsweetened, right, just peanut butter, just salts and oil, ground up, and then half a frozen banana. So it's an important day. I hope all of you are well. I hope you enjoyed your Christmas or Festivus or whatever. Hello, everybody in the chat. Holly, our moderator. Good to see everybody. I've been moving all week. Obviously don't have my full studio set up yet, but we will. Might be a little different than before. Might be a little more pared down, just because I'm going to be working on other stuff. I've got some directing work I'm going to be doing. So we're excited for that. And welcome to everybody watching on the Rumble, or not the Rumble, the Rockfin. Alfred Das Liebe, good to see you. And everybody on my YouTube and Lee Camp's YouTube. As I say every week, if you're watching on one of our YouTubes, make sure you subscribe to the other guy's YouTube because it helps both of us. So let's just get ready. One of the berries didn't get the blender in this new place isn't as like get it done the way my other blender was. You need a good blender, folks. There's a couple key ingredients I need. Oh, wait. Shit, I'll be right back. Hold on. All right, sorry about that. Here we are. All right, let's do it, everybody. I don't have a microphone, so I'm just going right into the laptop. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Government Secrets, episode 108, with the two most censored comedians in America, Lee Camp and Graham Elwood.
I think we're setting a new bar for professionalism this time.
It's really amazing.
I find it kind of odd you didn't introduce me before leaving for a few minutes. Then I could have chatted.
I don't know. I just felt like...
You were like, Lee has the personality of drywall, so I'll just show that. It's really not much difference.
Lee, I think you're just like a bland wall. That's basically my statement on you. Is you're, ladies and gentlemen, the bland gray wall of comedy, ladies and gentlemen. Lee Camp.
I didn't want to introduce you alone because I figured you'd lose more viewers than the wall, than the empty single light switch wall I have behind me. I figured that would hang on to the viewers.
Oh my God.
Also, I feel like we got a glimpse of what it's going to look like when the CIA finally takes you out. It's just going to be an empty chair live stream.
With just Government Secrets live episode.
Yeah.
It'll just be call and the episode. It'll just be text of like CIA propaganda, whatever. Just like Lee and Graham are communists or whatever.
It'll be Graham Elwood left to go perform his pedophilia acts in Thailand.
Yeah,
he apologizes.
Graham Elwood has been paid by China to make sure everybody's iPhone doesn't work or whatever.
I have to say, my issue with smoothies, they taste great. I've realized there's some sort of healthful benefit that goes on. But I drink them for like, hey, I'm having my breakfast. And then I finish and I go, I'm starving. I don't know how to solve that problem.
Well, are you putting like, this is where I think the peanut butter is key. Because I ran out of peanut butter and I made a smoothie with everything I normally have without the peanut butter. And it felt too light. It felt like it wasn't enough.
I had a friend, longtime friend in New York. He's now gone far right and he hosts far right radio shows, named Jimmy Fela. And it was hilarious. We had it was like a month long. It was when Jamba Juice was really getting big and it just arrived in New York and everybody was like, oh, Jamba Juice is here. And he was like, I'm going on a diet. I'm doing Jamba Juice. That's it. And every night he would have the largest size Jamba Juice peanut butter smoothie.
Those are milkshakes.
Over the course of that month, he gained like 20 pounds. And then he finally looked up and they have like 1,500 calories or something.
I remember
it's like a day's worth.
It's pretty healthy. And I remember going into Jamba Juice when the craze came. I was like, oh, cool. And I was like, wait, this has sherbet in it or ice cream. Like this is a dessert. This is a milkshake. Like who are you?
It's actually got a blended up double Big Mac.
Yeah, it's literally. And there was this like small like page on their board or whatever that was like all natural smoothies. And I was like, oh, these are just fruit and like almond milk and protein powder without like ice cream and a fucking cupcake grounded up or whatever the hell they had in there. And so
they just set the cupcake on the top. you eat through the cupcake to get to this smoothie.
And because there's like one apple slice in there, they're like, it's healthy, like, come on.
Yeah.
Who are you fooling? Well, this is our last show of 2022, buddy, before
there is that. Yes. For big time fans, we are off next week, but yeah, this is, and I feel like we did all that could be done with this show.
In all honesty, I think 2022 was a pretty banner year for the show because we got to our 100th episode. We did 3 live shows in 3 different countries.
Pretty amazing.
One of them behind the Berlin Wall in East Germany.
Despite multiple venues saying they couldn't work with us because they support, quote unquote, support Ukraine. They support Ukraine's right to be killed for as long as possible.
Yeah, they support Ukraine's right to be a puppet state in America's proxy war. Yeah. They support that. And now they're having a really cold winter thanks to American sanctions. So I don't know what they still view us. But yeah, we were denied. For those of you just tuning in or not knowing this, we did these 3 shows in October and we started planning it in the spring. And we thought we were going to do 6, maybe upwards of 8 to 10 cities. And numerous cities said no to us because we had both been on Russian TV and they supported Ukraine. And so it was like, oh, so you think we support the Russian invasion? Like it was just preposterous. And we found 3 venues willing to have us. And it was pretty awesome. So,
and 2 of those are, for those who didn't catch them, 2 of those are free episodes that you can listen to. And one of them is at patreon.com/governmentsecrets.
Yeah. So you can, episode 100 was live in London. So check that out.
So we got some cool shit today. Of course, we continue to reveal the CIA. We should mention. I feel like if any show is going to mention it, it should be ours. That Joe Biden has released another whatever it is, 10 or 20,000 pages from the CIA about JFK, but they continue to withhold several thousand. And of the ones that have been revealed, some of it's redacted. So basically, they're just like, yeah, we'll keep releasing the stuff that doesn't reveal any of the truth.
Right. It'll just be like, we release these things just like outlining JFK's shoes or the type of tires that on his car for the motorcade, or just all this like nonsense that's like, and this one page is redacted. Oh, that just happens to be the page where we say the CIA killed Kennedy. Like that page just happens to.
Yep.
So that's good. Joe Biden is really leading us out of the darkness into the light.
I've always said that about him. Always said that. I gained more spiritual wisdom from his eulogy for Strom Thurmond than pretty much any other speaker that I've heard.
I think when he fumbles around a sentence because he's got clear cognitive decline, that's when I see God.
Because you can tell he's looking him in the eyes.
He's looking right in the eye. Because God's like,
hey, time's up, buddy.
You and I, we're about to meet face to face. So you might want to get your affairs in order, pal.
Get your affairs in order. Yeah. So what do you want to do first? You want to hit him with the CIA or the history of Central Park?
Oh, fantastic, folks. We have a great episode. We're going to CIA's history of drug trafficking and the racist history of Central Park. We just have two fun-filled topics for you to round out the new year.
I mean, in our defense, it would be weird for us to have something positive. It would be the history of the CIA giving handies to homeless.
That's still creepy, Lee. That's not that positive. That's
consensual, Graham. Jesus.
That's your best. That's the best story you could come up with, Lee.
That's my good news story. Why? What's yours?
Not giving them housing, but just hand jobs, and then go back to your tent, and then they just.
Yeah. I mean, Graham, consensual. I can't stress that enough.
I feel like there's on the list of things the homeless need. I feel like that's not. I feel like
you're one of these people. Yeah, they don't need alcohol. They'll just use it for a beer. They need housing. Who are you to tell them what they need? Maybe they need a handy.
I want to say that's candidly is. I don't think that's in the top 5. Maybe if you want to put that in the top 10 of things they need, Lee, I really feel like food, clothing, and shelter kind of feels like the big 3. We got to get to those.
I don't know who you've been speaking to, but they clearly are not in touch with the nation's homeless.
Maybe it's just me. I'm just sexually repressed, so I just think that's weird. So yeah, why don't we I think we should do this, since we just had Christmas and the season of giving and gifts returns, and now people stuck in airports because Southwest doesn't want to hire people or whatever logistics. Here's the thing real quick about Southwest. You can't expect an airline to be able to foresee bad weather that happens every year this time of year, and a lot of people flying. You expect an airline to be
also you can't expect them to foresee a climate crisis that has been hitting us for years.
Yeah, and it's not like every winter there's snowstorms that cripple the airports. It's not like that happens every year. And so
I feel like denial is a big part of it. You can't say no without snow. Or no, you can't say snow without no. Sorry, I got it backwards.
Either way, you could put either one of those on a bumper sticker, Lee. I don't think it matters at this point. But since we're in the season of gift giving and returning gifts, I think we should talk about the wonderful gifts the CIA has done in distributing drugs. So there's 2 I want to talk about. First of all, and again, this is from Wikipedia's page that says allegations of CIA drug trafficking. Yes, they're just allegations.
You can't prove. We can neither confirm nor deny anything.
Yes. So there are books and investigation on the subject that have received general notice, including works by historian Alfred McCoy, professor and diplomat Peter Dale Scott, and journalist Gary Webb. Now, we've talked about some of Gary Webb stuff before on the show.
Actually,
and also,
if you want to share the image, we have one of Gary Webb, but we did talk about him before, yeah.
But we're going to talk about two other. Gary Webb did basically the how cocaine was smuggled in here and crack and everything like that, and
into black communities, and he did an epic, investigative, hard-working job to reveal this, and then was harassed and harangued and lost his job and his money and everything, his life, and then supposedly killed himself with multiple shots to the head.
Yeah, he shot himself. He committed suicide by shooting himself twice in the head, which very believable. Just like Epstein hung himself with a paper T-shirt. So it's all just standard stuff that we should just believe.
If you're gonna, folks. It's a lesson for the kids out there. If you're gonna kill yourself, double tap. All right.
Double tap. Always double tap.
Yeah.
And if you're on suicide watch in a prison, you can still use those shirts, those paper shirts that they give you. They're still sturdy enough in a room that deliberately has nothing in it for you to hang yourself with.
And the guy in the cell nearby said he heard a lot of screaming, which, if right beforehand, which if I were going to suicide myself, there'd be a lot of screaming beforehand. I agree.
Yes, I would definitely sound like I was struggling with Mossad agents. I mean, CIA guys. I was committing suicide. Anyway, so we have talked about Gary Webb, whose photo is up right now. But I wanted to focus on, there were hearings and investigations and reports to the U.S. House of Representatives, the Senate, the Department of Justice, and the CIA's Office of the Inspector General. Oh, I'm sure that CIA Inspector General guy he's really going to uncover what's going on at the CIA. I trust that office implicitly. But there might be some couple countries that you did not know of, like France. Illegal heroin labs were first discovered in Marseille, France in 1937. These labs were run by Corsican gang leader Paul Carbone. For years, the Corsican underworld had been involved in the manufacturing and trafficking of heroin, primarily to the United States. So, and just to give people a little backstory here, the heroin epidemic really started to hit America in the 40s. Can
you change the view back to?
Yeah. So, and one of the reasons the heroin trade, so this was being fed here in the CIA, and I'm going to show you in a second how the CIA was aware of this, but after World War II, people might not know this. So heroin hit America post World War II, late 40s and into the 50s. And one of the, obviously it was being fed to us, but one of the reasons why it also took off was the US military in World War II used morphine for battlefield painkillers. When guys got shot, they'd be stuck with morphine. So a lot of returning GIs had horrible morphine addictions when they came back. And
opium goes back hundreds of years, right?
Oh, yeah. Opium goes back hundreds of years. And there's been numerous times throughout history where there's been horrifying opium epidemics in China and other parts of Asia. And so these soldiers then started doing heroin to feed their morphine addiction that they got during war. So it's another example of how war just has intergenerational catastrophic trauma.
Right.
It's not just the physical blowing up of a city or whatever. It's just, so that's what fueled the heroin addiction. And also then you had famous jazz musicians like Charlie Parker, Coltrane. All these guys were heroin addicts. Some of them, Coltrane got clean, Parker died of it, and a couple other people.
They're not just jazz. There's plenty of other comedians. John Belushi. There's plenty.
But Yeah, I mean, heroin went into the 70s and 80s, but in that era in the 40s and 50s, that was coming mainly from France. That's how it was affecting. So it was this heroin network that eventually became
Did I say
known
Jim Bush?
as Jim Belushi. John's his brother.
John.
No,
No,
John.
John.
Yeah. And so this became known as the French Connection, which there was a movie about this. The Corsican gang was protected by the CIA and the SDEC, which is the basically external documentation and counter espionage service of France. It's basically France's secret arm, whatever. It's their spy arm. And so they were protected by the CIA and the CDECE after World War II in exchange to prevent French blank. Here are your choices, Lee. The CIA was willing to let, and the special whatever CIA of France was protecting Corsican gangs from distributing heroin to the United States because they wanted to. The Corsicans were going to fight. Was it French puppeteers,
mimes,
croissant makers, or communists? Which one of those? Which one of those do you think?
Dude, I will always say that our true war is against mimes.
Without a doubt. I mean, this is a nightmare.
It's offensive on so many levels. I mean, my top problem with it is there's no wall there. It's
exactly.
Not there.
This is a goddamn house of lies.
It's not there.
I'm not grabbing a rope. I'm just moving my hands like an asshole to make you think I have a rope in my hands.
By the way, this bit is killing on the podcast.
The audio people, you're gonna love this,
dude. If you've ever heard Mime the podcast, it is one of my favorites.
It's just like
an hour
music.
It's an hour a week of silence.
No, Lee. Unfortunately, you are incorrect. The correct answer.
Fuck.
Shockingly, communist. It's weird. Has this ever happened? Have we ever covered a story where America let awful people do awful things just because they were against communists? Has that ever happened in this?
What the fuck was the name of the NATO operation that basically left guns all across Europe for right wingers to?
Oh God.
So we covered it. It's the Left Behind units.
Yeah, God, I forget.
That was designed to like kill any communists that were still around, but I'll remember it in a minute, and then I'll yell it at you while you're talking about something else. Gladio. Thank you, Adrian. Operation Gladio.
Operation Gladio. I mean, we've covered this theme. I want to say this theme has been in at least a dozen government secrets episodes.
Oh, my favorite was the one you did. What country was it? Was the Philippines, where they put holes in the necks of the communists they had killed to make it look like vampires had done it to scare the townspeople?
Yes. Yeah, I believe that was the Philippines. Or Indonesia. No,
or Indonesia. It might have been.
I think it was Indonesia. It was Indonesia. Because that's again, we put Suharto in power and he was a brutal butcher. He butchered his people, but we were okay with it because he didn't like communists. Like again,
he was our guy. And so you just start poking holes in the necks of the dudes you kill.
So the CIA totally okay with Americans getting hooked on heroin, dying, decimating communities, families, destroying everything, just so we can stop some French communists. And let's be honest, how dangerous are French communists going to really be? I mean, let's.
They'll give away so many good crips, so.
Like.
By the way, Lou is telling us in the comments that it's Philippines.
It is the Philippines. Okay, thank you for that clarification. So. They were working to prevent French. The reason we backed the Corsican heroin drug gang was they were working to prevent French communists from bringing the old port of Marseille under their control. So it's better, according to the CIA, and this is something every American needs to hear. I know we have people from other countries listening, and that's great, but Americans, you need to understand the mentality of this. So it is better for a heroin gang that probably kills people, not just with their product, but anyone that gets in their way. They're a brutal gang that sells and distributes heroin mainly in America, but all throughout, I'm sure all throughout Europe. If you know anybody who got hooked on heroin, died from heroin, it ruined communities. It fucking killed the Black community and the Latino community in America in the 60s and 70s. I mean, it killed musicians, it killed artists. So that's
someone just brought up Lenny Bruce in the comments.
Yeah, Lenny Bruce OD'd of heroin.
Jim Morrison.
Jim Morrison
actually in France.
Hendrix, I think. Jimi Hendrix, maybe. Not to mention.
Well, Janis Joplin was like alcohol with heroin or something.
They would rather let those people run a port than communists. That's the mentality of the psychos that run our country and the horrific assholes that run the CIA. So,
yeah, it was an all or nothing view for them. It was we are in an existential fight against just the ideas of communism. So the ideas that there shouldn't be a class system in the way that capitalism has it. Now, this is not to say that I support, the communist communities, or I think that communist Russia was great or the Soviet Union was great. None of that. But they viewed themselves as an existential fight against this classless, somewhat class, or at least less class division. And they would kill and maim and destroy as many lives as they needed to fight that fight. And
again, yeah, like you said, it's not like neither one of us are like, yay, Soviet Union communism was so awesome. It was really brutal in many ways.
Right. I'm gonna go out on a limb here, grab a third rail. Stalin, not a good dude. I'm gonna say that. I don't know if that offends anyone.
Yeah, that's pretty offensively. But this is the psychos that run our country. So that was just France. Then there was the Golden Triangle of Southeast Asia. So during the Korean War, the first allegations of CIA drug trafficking surfaced after 1949, stemming from a deal whereby arms were supplied to Chiang Kai-shek's defeated generals in exchange for intelligence. Later in the same region, the CIA was sponsoring a secret war in Laos. We've covered some of this. From 61 to 1975, it was openly accused of trafficking heroin in the Golden Triangle area. To fight the secret war against Pathet Lao communist movement in Laos, again, though we got to stop the communists, the CIA used the Hmong population. Because of the war, the Hmong depended upon opium poppy cultivation for hard currency. The Plain of Jars had been captured by Pathet Lao fighters and the Plain of Jars is mainly the region where they grew the poppy. So this agricultural region was captured by the communists in 1964, which resulted in the Royal Lao Air Force being unable to land its C-47 transport aircraft on the Plain of Jars for its opium transport, which we were backing. The Royal Laotian Air Force had almost no light planes that could land on dirt runways near the mountaintop poppy fields, having no way to transport the opium. So the Hmong were faced with economic ruin. Air America, a CIA front organization, was the only airline available in northern Laos.
Wow. I did not know that was the name of that. And that's so funny because the liberal radio channel was called Air America in the early 2000s. that I was a fan of before like 2008 because I was basically a liberal. I thought the Democrats were trying to do good, and
Yeah, we all.
it took me a while to wake up. And during that time, it's so funny that, and here's the thing: like, if that was just somebody's YouTube channel, you would assume they didn't know what Air America was. There's no way these people didn't research that Air America was a CIA front before they started their channel.
And also, I want to bring this up. The Hollywood made a fun movie with Robert Downey Jr. and Mel Gibson about Air America, where Mel Gibson is this, lone wolf.
I think I saw that.
Yeah. With a CIA airlift operation in Laos during the Vietnam conflict. But they were literally like, it was a Hollywood whitewash version of it. It wasn't the like, this is how evil the CIA really is.
Right.
So it goes into another thing we've talked about on this show of how the CIA does have offices in Hollywood, and they get script approval, and they're able to put this message out there. And usually it's this type of like that Air America movie message of like, the CIA's doing they're bending the rules a little bit, but you kind of need to, like, they don't hide from their sort of corruption in these movies, but it's always presented in a necessary evil,
Yeah. It's kind of the perfect example of the term limited hangout. The term limited hangout is basically is used to describe acting like they're revealing something by revealing part of it. Right. And when they reveal part of it, people go, oh, that's the story they didn't want us to know. And they stop asking questions. So the limited hangout is used to act like there are these crazy revelations when in fact it's actually used to stop further questioning of what's happened. Mm-hmm. So, like a good limited hangout would be like, oh, they bungled the JFK autopsy and didn't do it right. Rather than it was fucking CIA that did it.
Yeah, and like we uncovered in the 3-part series with the JFK and the unspeakable, there were autopsies done and they came in and changed them. Like there was forensic. They said, "Oh, this was a front bullet wound and a rear exit wound," and then they came in and said, "Nope." So
and put in other pieces of skull and
and that's why the bungled. So much chaos in Dallas that day that they just didn't get it right is an easier like pill to swallow, and it's a great way to fool people,
right? Right. And this, why was the CIA so heavily involved in the drug trade? Besides just, it was an easy way to fight communists, I guess. But on top of that, it gave them large supplies of off the books money, which nowadays they don't really need that because the US government will print them whatever the fuck they want. But back then there was kind of more of a need for like, well, we can't go through Congress for this money. So how do we get money? That was the whole Iran-Contra scandal was we can't go through Congress for this. So how do we get money to the Contras without,
And also then, decimating communities, largely communities of color, and also in the 60s and 70s, the counterculture and the anti-government, the revolutionary, they infused drugs into that community. So now we got everybody all high and hooked on drugs rather than organizing, whatever, anti-Vietnam protests or anything like that. So they're making money, like you say, and they're decimating communities and fighting the communists in whatever country. So it's like, oh, this is a win-win-win for them. And now their budget is just completely off the books, so they don't need to worry about anybody.
They don't need to care. We've covered before how Nixon's aide Ehrlichman revealed in the 1990s in an interview that they knew that the reason they were creating the drug war, Nixon was the original kind of drug war beginnings, and they did it to specifically undermine the two communities that Nixon was afraid of and fighting, which were Black communities and activist communities.
Yeah. So they helped make, heroin and because, the Nixon's war on drugs made everybody go, oh, I'm going to use drugs because I'm an activist, or I'm, I don't want the squares, the older people to, yeah. Anyway, so back to the Air America. So Alfred McCoy wrote in his book, according to several unproven sources, Air America began flying opium from mountain villages north and east of the Plain of Jars to CIA asset Hmong General Vang Ping's headquarters in Longting. The CIA front company Air America was alleged to have profited from transporting opium and heroin on behalf of Hmong leader Vang Ping, or of turning a blind eye. I doubt it was that they made money. This seems a little Wikipedia whitewash to me. Or turned a blind eye to the Laotian leader military doing it. The allegation has been supported also by former CIA Laos paramilitary Anthony Phosphany, aka Tony Poe, former Air America pilots, and other people involved in the war. It is portrayed in the movie Air America. Larry Collins alleged during the Vietnam War, U.S. operations in Laos were largely a CIA responsibility. The CIA surrogate there was a Laotian general, Vang Pao, who commanded Military Region 2 in northern Laos. He enlisted 30,000 Hmong tribesmen in the service of the CIA. These tribesmen continued to grow as they had for generations the opium poppy. Before long, there were unproven allegations that it was a mafia family from Florida had established a heroin drug refinery lab in Region 2. The lab's production was soon being ferried out on the planes of the CIA front airline Air America. A pair of BNDD, which is the predecessor to the Drug Enforcement Administration, agents tried to seize an Air America. Further documentation of the CIA connected to the Laotian opium trade was provided by Rolling Stone magazine in 1968 and by Alfred McCoy in 1972. McCoy stated that in most cases, the CIA's role involved various forms of complicity, tolerance, and studied ignorance about the trade, not any direct culpability in the actual trafficking. That sounds like bullshit to me, like McCoy was paid to do that. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
The CIA did not handle heroin, but it did provide its drug lord allies with transport arms and political protection. In sum, the CIA's role in Southeast Asia heroin trade involved indirect complicity rather than direct culpability.
Well, but here's the thing. If you have a drug lord that you're providing, what was it, money, transport, protection, that guy's now working for the CIA.
Yeah.
Like, he is, if you're giving him transport, protection, you're his bodyguards, you're doing all this shit, you're paying him, like, yeah, you went and found a quote unquote drug lord, but he's CIA.
Right. And I wouldn't be surprised, well, first of all, if this Alfred McCoy was kind of paid or threatened or whatever to say, minimize it, write the story a little. CIA knew about it, but turned a blind eye. Because even then, again, it's like what we talk about. Turning a blind eye is not as bad as they were just getting drugs, selling them. You know what I mean? Like, right. They should have done, but that can fall.
America will generally America will turn a blind eye when they hear the CIA turned a blind eye.
Yeah, they'll let it slide. America will absolutely let that slide, and they know that. The other thing too, this is again just a theory of mine, but it makes sense in terms of the war in Afghanistan because Afghanistan has huge opium fields. I mean, we would fly over them in Blackhawks, and they'd be like, oh, in the spring they would point them out to us. And
dude, reading Matthew Ho's description of what they would do in Afghanistan, they would pay. They would basically be given money by the Pentagon or whatever and they'd say, these U.S. troops would be, like Matthew Ho they'd be told, pay Afghan opium farmers to burn their fields, and so they go to a well-known leader, warlord, that type of person, and they'd say, we'll pay you all this money to burn your field. Well, what he'd do is he'd go and he'd burn his competitors' fields, and then he'd get the money and keep growing his own heroin.
And you got to wonder, I find it hard to believe there's no connection with the opioid epidemic in this country and our having, controlling Afghanistan. Like, you got to believe that these pharmaceutical companies were like, bring that
something like 80% of the opium produced in Afghanistan was ending up in America.
Oh, it had to be.
It was some crazy amount.
There's no way we had control over it, and there's too much money to be made. And you see, like, when you see how the opium epidemic was done, and I'm convinced that not only was it, they use it to make Oxycontin. So the pharmaceutical companies, I bet you, since this is just corporate war now, said, hey, send that opium to us and we'll process it and turn it into Oxycontin. And then we know what they did with that. They paid off the doctors and told people that wasn't habit forming. And
they just told the doctors it wasn't habit forming. And then they saw as the bodies were piling up, they knew pretty early, like in the late 90s, that it was killing thousands, and they just covered it up and acted like it wasn't happening. And
it's so that's the CIA's drug trafficking story for everybody. Happy New Year.
Yay. All right, let's go on to the racist history of Central Park, and Graham, hit the funny voice.
It's time for Government Secret segment number 2, Central Park's racist history.
Oh, well, doesn't matter. But let's see. I'll show you that image in a second. Anyway, so Central Park, I lived in New York for 12 years. Central Park, obviously, everyone knows it. It is so important to New York City in so many ways. For one thing, it breaks up the monotony of the fucking gray, snot-stained fucking asphalt that is all of New York City. Every last inch, like you see pigeons fighting over a chewed piece of gum, is like nature, quote unquote. Central Park is like so important to what New York is.
Do you remember this? It's the Onion did an article, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, 3-4 years ago, that was like all New Yorkers wake up one day and realize it sucks living there. Like
Dude, there was a lot about it I liked. I liked the energy in many ways, but it would be a fucking awful place to have a family. I can't imagine. Here's the thing. I can't imagine being in New York City and caring about anyone other than yourself.
Oh, it's I have a friend who's raising his kids in New York City, and they're going to all these special schools and learning all this stuff, and it's just like, man, it just seems.
Yeah, you got to send them to some special niche school that's like hidden in Brooklyn somewhere.
It's just like I go to New York and I'm usually there for 3 days, and the first day I'm like, oh, New York, sweet. The second day, by the end of the second day, I'm like, yeah, I can go. I'm ready to hit it. I'm out. I got this. Yeah.
Wait, you don't go surfing in the Hudson?
No. And it's just like the pushy, everyone in a bad mood. Oh, great. What now? Like that just 24/7. I'm just like, yeah, I'm good. I can, there's good restaurants outside of this city I can go to. You guys are fantastic. So
my favorite ever thing, one of the favorite things I saw in New York City was there's this guy crossing a street, and he's got like a walker, and he's clearly like 142 years old, and he's like limping, and it's really like, and I just like feel in pain just watching him try and exist against gravity. And this truck comes and pulls up, like screeches to a halt next to this old guy crossing the street. And the dude leans out of the window, leans on the horn and goes, "Come on, Grandpa, moving along." And I was like, and the dude almost had a heart attack from the horn of the truck. And I was like, wow, I can't imagine getting to that point.
I know. And then to the lifelong New Yorkers that just love it. And when they would come, like New York comics would come to LA and be on when I did my movie podcast, and the way they talk. And I finally went, you guys are just scared little island dwellers that can't handle being off your little island. Like you've just like, oh, there's traffic and too much sun. And just like, you guys.
I won't defend. I mean, LA traffic's fucking horrific, but I won't defend. Actually, I've heard. I don't know if I've heard anyone trash LA as much as you have, but I
love
I will not defend them except when it comes to comedy, which this could be a larger debate. And I don't know how it is now, but I mean, 15 years ago, it was like when I was deciding where I was trying to figure out when leaving college, whether to go to New York or LA to do comedy. And I had multiple people tell me, well, go to New York if you want to be a comedian. If you want to be an actor who occasionally does a comedy set, then go to LA. So I was like, all right, well, I want to be a comedian. I want to be a stand-up comic. So. But in terms of the other arguments, yeah, no. There's plenty of ways to shit on both areas. Okay, so Central Park, but it raises the question, how did Central Park get created? Because you kind of think like, okay, well, yes, New York has not always been chock-a-block with buildings and people and everything. However, it's been well over 100 years that it's been like that. So at what point where they were like, this is the park area where no one can live? And sure enough, they did that while people were living there. Let's see. Did I share that? No, I shared the wrong thing with you. So here's, this may be the only known image because this is the only one I've seen of the actual Seneca Village, it was called. So Seneca Village was in the area that is now Central Park. And I'm reading from the Fordham Observer. And most of these articles, this is written in 2022. Most of the articles are written recently because this history was largely forgotten and then maybe denied for many years. So it's only really come to light in the past like 5 years. Manhattan in the early 1800s was an undeveloped land full of opportunity, a stark contrast to the overcrowded island we now know. Amid the racial prejudice rife in New York at the time, a predominantly black community called Seneca Village sprouted up in 1825 in what is now Central Park along the Upper West Side. It was a safe haven from the crowded and racist downtown area of Manhattan. Seneca Village eventually developed into a thriving middle-class neighborhood, complete with 50 homes, 3 churches, and a school for black children. Now, there's some key phrases in there where a heavily black community, a middle-class black community, we can't fucking have that.
No.
And the other thing is that at that time in New York City, if you were black and owned a certain amount of property, it was like $250 or something, you could vote. So black voters lived there as well. Then on top of that, 30% of everyone living there was not black, but was some other form of immigrant like German and Irish. So you have whites and blacks, white immigrants and blacks living peacefully together in a largely middle-class neighborhood.
Who owned land and could vote.
Who owned land and could vote.
Yeah, well, we can't let the blacks and the Irish vote or have power, so we gotta like.
Does that sound like something that the upper class white ruling class would be cool with?
Yeah, I feel like no, they wouldn't. It's almost the same thing of like the last segment we just did, where it's like, oh, communists might get something, so we got to go run heroin. So it's like, oh, right. Middle class black people own land and have a decent jobs and economy. Nah, we gotta
That's not, it just doesn't feel right to me. There's just something that feels a little off,
I mean, we stole this island from Native Americans anyway, so it doesn't feel right that any person of color should have any sort of economic stability and be able to transfer intergenerational wealth. You know what I mean?
Right, right. And we've covered before the destruction and just killing spree that was it was Tulsa, right? Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Something similar happened in, I believe, North Carolina. But anyway, elite white landowners in the early 19th century were unimpressed by New York, especially when compared to already established European cities like London and Paris. They decided New York was missing an elegant recreational park, much like the ones scattered across Europe. Once the plans for the park were drawn up in 1853, the New York State Legislature voted to acquire more than 700 acres of land in the middle of Manhattan through eminent domain, including the land occupied by Seneca Village and other communities of Irish and German immigrants. And what this article is leaving out is, and maybe this is the cynic in me or the conspiracy theorist, how did they decide that this was exactly where the park is, that it wasn't one block over or something?
Right.
And something tells me it might have had to do with the fact that Seneca Village was there.
Yeah. I think that's exactly where we want to put our new park, is right where you guys are having you're thriving economically. I think that's where this new park needs to go. It's like, it's the same logic of like, we need to get rid of this democratically elected leader who has the audacity to rule a country that's over our oil.
Just happens to be over our oil. Yeah.
Happens to be over our oil. So
an entire established community was displaced, and although landowners were monetarily compensated for the property taken from them, it was not enough to remedy the injustices caused by the seizure of land. The evicted residents were scattered, and the school and 3 churches that served the community were destroyed. So, yes, they got paid for their land, but it still achieved the goal, which was to break up a thriving Black middle-class community. The New York Constitution of 1821 stated that Black man, I said this, with $250 of property could vote. So it also, in effect, terminated the right to vote of a large Black community in New York City. Seneca Village started in 1825 and was brutally terminated in its prime in 1857. For the development of Central Park, the existence of Seneca Village was largely forgotten until Elizabeth Blackmar, I think forgotten intentionally. The victors write the history books, right?
Whoops. I forgot that we stole your houses and your land and gave you and removed your right to vote. Ugh, I forgot that. Sorry.
I forgot that we put a several mile long path where abused horses can pull tourists as they shit on everywhere over your homeland. I forgot that.
Yeah. And make the demarcation for the Upper West and Upper East sides where you really have privilege. So that's the beginning of that privilege, that line of privilege on Manhattan.
The existence of Seneca Village was largely forgotten until Elizabeth Blackmar and Roy Rosenzweig brought it back in the public consciousness in 1993 article, The Park and the People, A History of Central Park. In 2011, an archaeological dig. All right, so I said 5 years, really more like 10 years. An archaeological dig of the land formerly occupied by Seneca Village from West 82nd to 89th Street was conducted by researchers at Columbia and the City University of New York in order to improve our understanding of the way the villagers lived. Afterwards, the Central Park Conservancy placed signs around former important sites in Seneca Village. Not that I don't want the signs, but that does seem to be how the United States work, right? We destroy a people and their land, and then we put a little plaque there.
Yep, and go, oh, sorry.
We wipe our hands.
Well, look, everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect, but at least you guys got a plaque. Does that sound fair?
Listen, how about this? Every June 5th, you can come and stand around your plaque. Does that make it better?
And we'll have some blowhard politicians wax poetically about righting wrongs with this plaque.
Construction of green spaces has often been linked to gentrification, or the process by which lower income residents, who tend to be people of color, are eventually priced out of their homes due to the movement of higher income people, who are mostly white, into their neighborhoods. It makes logical sense that parks are correlated with gentrification. Who wouldn't want to live next to a park, especially a newly constructed one? There's a reason why apartments close to Central Park are so expensive. Parks raise property values and in turn displace the low-income communities that they were built near. This is ironic. Low-income communities are the most in need of parks, and yet when parks are built, they are the ones least likely to benefit from their construction. That's a fair point, that not only do these parks that we put in usually displace the poorest residents, because they would never put in a park that displaced almost exclusively fucking upper class multimillionaires, for a few reasons. One, because the people making those choices are part of the ruling class, so they're not going to destroy the houses of their own people and the lives of their own people. Secondly, those multimillionaire ruling class people that they might want to kick out for their park generally have the ability to fight by paying lawyers and fight by paying politicians. So
yeah. If you've got money and land and of course, according to that old law, you could then vote. There you go. You have the money to fight this stuff, and they know the poor people, and so that's why they're just always sticking it to them. Because who's gonna? What are they gonna do? They don't have time or money to get lawyers and go into. They don't have that at all, and they know that. They know you don't have the money. So it's like,
yeah,
sorry.
and a lot of I have been in a courtroom a couple of times where you see the difference in money between people, and it's you may have a lawyer. Let's say you have a little bit of money and you can afford a lawyer. That does not mean that you can afford a lawyer that can go up against 50 lawyers from a corporation or even 10 lawyers from a corporation. Yeah. They will obliterate you. I watched my
obliterate you in some cases just in the amount of time. They'll drag this out knowing you can afford to pay that one lawyer for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but you can't afford to pay that lawyer for 9 months. So
I watched my brother's wife fight a pro bono case to get an innocent guy out of jail, and she had moved during the course of the trial. She had moved from New York to LA, and they knew this, so they would keep scheduling court dates and canceling after she had flown from LA back to New York, basically just to try and drain her of the money to take those flights, the energy to take those flights, just to try and drain her.
Yeah, that's what they'll absolutely do. And if you don't have the money, they'll just sit there and crunch the numbers and say, well, we can drag this out for this a long time, and then we'll win,
Anyway, there it is, the thriving middle-class Black community that once existed in part of Central Park.
Outstanding, guys. And that same community was then ghettoized, and then, as we learned in the first segment, was then sent heroin. So that was America's just been fantastic in its treatment of people of color, specifically the Black community has been treated so well by this country and the CIA and the good citizens of New York City and the wealthy assholes there, and it's been great. It's we should all be proud to be Americans.
This is right, Graham, this is right up your alley. This is, I feel like I'm stealing one from you. For the extra content at patreon.com/government secrets, I have something about the CIA considering dropping condoms on the Soviet Union.
Oh yeah. Oh God. This is right in the wheelhouse of communism and CIA insane ideas. And I love a good CIA op. That's just nuts. That's just bananas.
So yes, we will bring you that and a couple extra stories at patreon.com/government secrets. And folks, we will be off next week though.
Next week we're off. But right now, folks, if you haven't already, you can see the link below. Go to patreon.com/government secrets. You can sign up and you get the backlog of all of the cool bonus government secrets that are on Patreon the minute you unlock that.
that are all evergreen.
All evergreen. And you can also, some of the tiers on Patreon, you get some cool merch. You can get a Government Secrets mug. And it's the only place you can get any Government Secrets merchandise. And you're supporting what we do, which we greatly, greatly appreciate. So go on over to Patreon. We'll be over there in just a couple minutes. But this has been Government Secrets, episode 108, CIA, drugs, and racist parks.
See you in a minute.
All right, buddy. Take care. Thanks, everybody. Laura Baza, wishing Lee Graham and all the rock fenders a lucky, peaceful, and kind and merciful New Year. Thank you so much. Alfred Das Liebe, Banner Lear, 3 live shows, constantly shifting days and times like the grains of sand in an hourglass. Thank you. All right, folks, that's our show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like, share, subscribe, whatever you're doing, however you're listening to this. And we will see you over at Patreon right now. So long, everybody.